Alright everyone, and welcome to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, or better to say, a foreword on how to approach, how to read what we are doing with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So, basically, some contextualization of what's going on to guide our or your reading experience. The game itself was developed by Ubisoft Montreal and was published in 2020 by Ubisoft as the 12th major installment of the whole Assassin's Creed series, and with that being the successor to the 2018 Assassin's Creed Odyssey. According to How Long to Beat, the game rates between 100 and 150 hours of gameplay without any DLCs, and I think this is, given the time I spent already in that game, fairly optimistic in terms of you need much more if you want to experience and explore all of the map. Looking into that, you see this is quite the area. But before we get to that, what are we actually looking at? So, because the game is so long, we can't focus on the whole game. I can't basically make a whole playthrough of that, and to be honest, you don't have the time to watch more than 100 hours of gameplay. So we will only focus on snippets of the overall narrative. So one could say, if our narrative is a tapestry, we'll pull out a few threads of that tapestry and look into different sub-narratives that support the overall narrative, which is the whole game. And we will look at the merger of what is real, what is represented, and with real, what is real actually. And so basically the question whether the game collapses distinctions between different kinds of spaces, respectively frames. We can say with Assassin's Creed in general that here the player world leaks into the real one and not vice versa. On different layers, so once with the player's real world, so us as players, but also by having two layers within the game. In a way, one could say Assassin's Creed is, and it might be a bit far-fetched, but it is like a modern-day Canterbury Tales. That means we have a meta-narrative that links all the individual stories. In the Canterbury Tales, this is our pilgrimage to Canterbury, which is our meta level, and in a way our connection of individual stories being told. Here our individual stories are the individual games, but whether we play in ancient Greek, whether we play in Japan, or whether we play in Anglo-Saxon England, it is always Assassin's Creed, so there must be a link. And the link here is, to give you some context in case you're not so familiar with the whole franchise, is our meta-narrative. So we basically have, and this is why it's called Assassin's Creed, the Assassin's Brotherhood and the evil guys, so to say, the Templar Order. The dispute between these two is as old as humankind. And it links back to, and this is now our fictional element, the Isu, one could say some kind of Atlanteans. So we talk about an ancient civilization predating humankind, or to be precise here, an ancient civilization that has created humans as, well, workforce. And then, to remain on a superficial level here, things went astray, so we do have much lore and story of Assassin's Creed that is continued from game to game. But the idea is that in our real world, and the real world won't play a role in the recordings here, but still that you have an idea, the real world is basically people looking for artifacts of this ancient civilization, using them for their own goals, and so history, which we basically see here around us, ties into present time. And diving here into our narrative happens via the so-called animus, so we dive into memories of ancestors, of people to uncover secrets, find artifacts, and the like. For Valhalla, our real-world setting is the world facing a disaster due to the activation of an Isu artifact, and now people look for help in the past. And this past is what we are mostly playing in. For Assassin's Creed Valhalla, our past is somewhere between 872 and 878, taking place in Anglo-Saxon England. And the game recounts some kind of Viking fantasy story during the expansion of the Vikings into the British Isles. And with that we have this merger, as already said, between fiction and reality. Because this takeover, one could say, of Anglo-Saxon England by the Vikings, that is a historical fact. Still, the narrative here involves much fiction. And our story is basically Eivor, whether you play as a male or female, Eivor doesn't really make a difference. So our character here, stemming from Norway, so actually in Norwegian, the idea of Viking is a generalization of Danes and Norwegians. And he or she travels to Anglo-Saxon England, where most of the story takes place. So here we are in Anglo-Saxon England with all our different kingdoms being represented. And the task is basically kill the bad guys and find allies with the kingdoms. And you see, I'm basically not through with the main story yet. And typical of Assassin's Creed, we meet real, or as far as we can say, real historical personalities in how far as they are represented in the game. We visit historical places in the game world. We are confronted with Anglo-Saxon literature. We are, for linguistics most importantly, confronted with the languages of the time of the 9th century. And the idea is that the game provides far more than the average user actually can recognize. It delivers Easter eggs, it delivers historical data, it shows real developments, but at the same time, it fulfills our expectations of the time. So this idea of cultural memory, of collective memory, what do we expect from the time? So we can say that Assassin's Creed Valhalla reconstructs Anglo-Saxon times, but by merging this with fictional persons, by taking people out of their own chronology, it collapses the distinctions between history, which in itself already contains fictional elements, and fantastic elements altogether. And so the question is, and this is what we will be looking into with the different snippets of the game, what is it that makes the game feel real, in quotation marks? How does the game manage to represent an Anglo-Saxon England that for us feels authentic, whatever authentic might be? What does the game do to create this immersion? And so we'll basically be looking at short snippets of the game. So given the length of the game, it is not possible to show whole story arcs here. So it's basically individual snippets of Anglo-Saxon culture, of Anglo-Saxon literature, and of Old English and Old Norse, and maybe a bit Latin in focus here. And this is in a way what these snippets will be about, focusing on aspects of these single threads, as I said, of the whole tapestry that we are looking at. So in a way, a selection of linguistic elements that are utilized to make Anglo-Saxon England come authentically alive for the game world. And I hope this provides some kind of context in terms of what we're actually doing. And that being said, let's dive into that.